You are listening to the Old School Movement podcast with Daz, Chris and Steve. You understand?
Ladies and gentlemen, yes, we're back. Old School Movements is in the house. You good, guys?
Good.
And on today's show, as you know, guys, we've had our 80s action heroes and villains series. This is going to be part 3, right, guys? Of the 80s
It's part 3 now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Part 3.
But this, villains. Yeah, but time was villains. Villains time. It's villains time. It's villains time. So on today's podcast, we're going to talk this pure about 80s villains. And what makes this podcast even greater and better is that we've got someone who actually made a book about 80s villains. He's got 2 books, actually. And we're going to get exclusive about the second book. And but first we're going to talk about his first book. So if you like 80s villains, the bad guys, because you know everybody loves a bad guy, today on the show we have Timon Singh. How you doing? You cool?
I'm good, guys. Woo! Cheers. Thanks for having me on. This is exciting.
It is exciting.
Author of Born to be Bad, we should say. The title of the book there is Born to be Bad.
Born to be Bad.
Yeah.
It sounds like a James Brown song, doesn't it?
But yeah. I'm bad. But I'm born to be bad. That's a bit Michael Jackson, isn't it? But yeah. Did you make that title up yourself, Timon?
I did. I think I had 2 working titles. One was either Bad to the Bone or Born to be Bad.
That's what I had in my head. You know, that's what I was going to say. Yeah,
when the Terminator steps out the bar and Terminator 2 and they play that. I thought, Then I thought, is that too on the nose? And I thought, because I'm interviewing actors who are, you know, are famed for playing bad guys throughout their career, I just thought Born to be Bad worked much better.
I think they both work really well, actually.
Yeah. Good. And I was saying at the top of this, everybody loves a villain. Like, you know, whether it's Darth Vader, Tony Montana, Clubber Lang, Jules Winfield, everybody loves a villain. But your book, is it specifically on 80s villains, right?
Yeah, so the idea when I got started was it was specifically going to be about the actors that played bad guys in the films that I watched growing up. So that was predominantly 80s action films, spilling slightly into the 90s and also a few from the 70s. Yeah. So you have Bob Wall in there from Enter the Dragon, because obviously martial arts films was a big part of my life growing up. It's predominantly 80s. And I mean, basically the 80s was the decade when the action genre took off and became like the blockbuster genre
I was going to say,
today.
Do you think the 80s was the decade for the explosion of the action movie?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You know, 40s and 50s you had like Western, 60s you had James Bond films, 70s you had like films like Bullet and the blaxploitation things. But it was the 80s when you had people like Schwarzenegger getting those multi-million-dollar salaries. And films like Rambo 3 and Total Recall and Terminator 2 being the most expensive films ever made at that time. The idea of a movie studio spending like $100 million on an R-rated 18 certificate film today, that's not really done. I mean, you get the odd one like Deadpool, but Rambo 3 being the most expensive film of all time, that's not happening these days.
No, it's not. No.
Yeah,
and that was a crap film as well.
They've learned the lessons.
That film was so cack. Why did you want to do a book about villains and not say heroes then?
So there were several reasons, and like you said, I think the villains are inherently the most interesting part of any film. I think an action film really is only as good as its villain, and I think that throughout the 80s you had a really wide range of types of bad guys. So everyone from like the big bodybuilder type, because you need someone to quite physically imposing to fight action heroes like Dolph Lundgren and Schwarzenegger. You also had like the classically trained British actor like your Alan Rickmans. You also had kind of these Russian, German dancers, ballet dancers like Alexander Godunov, who played Carl in Die Hard. He was a ballet dancer. And then you had martial artists, you had stuntmen. And I think that the people that played bad guys were so rich and diverse, they would all have different stories. And the other reason was I knew they'd be easier to interview than people like Schwarzenegger. Yeah. And, you know, while I'm a big fan of those guys, to a certain degree, in most of those films, they're just playing variations on a theme. So, you know, if you're watching something like Demolition Man or Cobra or Cliffhanger, to a certain extent, there's not that much difference between those characters that Stallone's playing. You've come for Stallone.
Yeah.
Whereas the bad guys, it's like they get to add a little bit more texture to the plot.
Yeah, true. No, you're right. So with your book, Born to be Bad, not bad to be, I was just about to say Bad to the Bone. Born to be Bad. Was it hard to track down these actors? Like, what was the process?
So I kind of got the idea one night when I was watching Robocop for like the 50th time.
I've seen it 51 times.
Yeah. But our local not multiplex, it's like in Bristol we have this tiny one-screen cult cinema, and it's got 100 seats in there, and they were doing like a 35mm screening of Robocop, and it was packed out. I was front row with a couple of friends, and while we were just drinking, watching it, and everyone was quoting along, I was like, the people that play the bad guys in this, like Clarence Boddicer's gang, you've got Kurtwood Smith, you have Paul McCrane, you have Ray Wise, who's played like loads of bad guys, and I was like, who cast these guys as bad guys? Because they're such like a unique mixture of guys, and like Kurtwood Smith has gone on just to play like, you know, loads of, you know, disapproving dads or creepy politicians, and they're not like the kind of actors that you would cast to go up against a cyborg cop. I was drunkenly cycling back home, and I was like, oh, I wonder how they ended up, you know, in that film. How did they get cast, you know, in Robocop? Did their careers change? And then I was like, speaking of which, how did like Vernon Wells get cast in Commando? Yeah,
Vernon Wells, the guy looks like Freddie Mercury in Commando, man, with that moustache. Damn.
And how did all these other actors? And then my drunken brain suddenly started whirling, and I scribbled down some like names on a pad. And the next morning, amazingly, my drunken idea still seemed like a good idea. So I just started jotting down actors who, you know, in my mind played the most iconic bad guys of the genre. And I was like, how easy is it going to be to kind of track down these guys? Yeah. So it was a kind of a mixture of looking. Some of them had personal websites where you could just email them directly. Some of them were on social media, and then a lot of them I had to get through agents and managers, which can be a chore. And a lot of them are like, are you paying them? It's like, no, it's like, well, we are not interested. Goodbye. So if you can get around the agents and the managers, that's kind of what I was trying to do.
Were any of the actors featured in the book paid, or did they all agree to do it?
No, they all did it, you know, free of charge. They just gave up their time, and they were incredibly generous. There were several actors who wanted exorbitant amount of money. There was one actor
not doing much anymore. Probably them sort of actors.
Exactly. There was one actor who was like, you haven't really done anything for
we haven't seen you since the
80s.
Years. You want how much?
And he wanted $5,000 for a phone interview and $2,500 just for an email interview. And I was like, mate, come on. No, you have not done anything of note for a while.
Why you're charging so much, isn't it?
Who was that then? Who was that? The guy that played Calibos in Clash of Titans or something?
No, that was Bolo Young from Bloodsport. Bolo wanted a lot of money. Yeah. I was like, no, Bolo, it's not worth it. No.
Wow.
Yeah. I was most upset.
You was boloed over then, weren't you? Bloody
yeah.
Proper.
Wow.
Yeah, that would have been. So
who was the main guy that you wanted and didn't get the book? Was it
so? There were several. I think it's also the reason I wrote a second book, because there were certain actors I wanted the first time round that I didn't get the second time round. And even in the second book, there was one actor that I didn't get that I really wanted to get, and that was Clancy Brown.
Yeah, that beast of a dude in Highlander, man. He was scary.
Clancy Brown is always working. He is just constantly working. And apparently he's really hard to get hold of to do interviews. There's a guy I know who's just currently written a book about the history of the Highlander franchise, Jonathan Melville. And I messaged him, I was like, how did you get Clancy Brown? He was like, had to get him at a convention, corner him, literally sit him down. And that is like a franchise that he doesn't like talking about because apparently he, through something, he feels like he might have got screwed out of some money on that one. But Clancy Brown, simply because of all like the roles that he's played, from like, you know, the prison warden in Shawshank Redemption to like the Kurgan. He's been in so much.
Those two roles in itself, because we was talking about this earlier on, and that's a guy we mentioned, but he was like he's like Biff's big brother.
He keeps cropping up in stuff. He was in like season 2 of Daredevil, and he showed up in The Mandalorian recently, and I think he was in Thor Ragnarok.
What was the character in Mandalorian?
It was character Mandalorian.
He was in the one where the Mandalorian teams up with a bunch of mercenaries to do a jailbreak on the ship.
He was the big devil guy.
He's the big devil guy, the horn guy, So he's constantly working, man. So it was him, Michael Ironside. I couldn't get Michael Ironside.
Michael Ironside, the guy who always wore that black leather jacket in V and Total Recall, the same black leather jacket, man.
He again doesn't do interviews.
No?
He likes to spend time with his family because like he beat 3 types of cancer, and I'm like, fair enough, man. So
thinking about it, he's one of them ones you never see him do. You don't see him do TV or radio interviews. You never hear of him.
Not really. I think he's a very private guy. And another one who was always working again was Kurtwood Smith. I couldn't get Kurtwood Smith because he's just constantly working. But a lot of the other names I was kind of writing down when I got started, so like Vernon Wells and Martin Coe from The Karate Kid and Stephen Burkhoff and David Patrick Kelly. I was like, it's just like, I've got to be able to, as long as I get these guys. And there was like it's like, if I can get 5 of these, then I know I've got a book.
You've got the book,
yeah. It's good that you said 5 because we've selected 5 from your book. And we're going to talk about 5 of the ones that reflected on our childhood and that we remembered. And we want to know about the experiences you had talking with them. And so the first one actually is David Patrick Kelly. Now, David Patrick Kelly is a Stacks, right? David Patrick Kelly is.
If we say one of his lines, you'll get it. If you say one of his lines,
David Patrick Kelly, Stacks, is the guy that got 2 milk bottles. What are milk bottles? Bottles.
Yeah, beer bottles.
Clicking them together, and he said, "Come out to play."
You know what the funny thing is? A friend of mine bigged up the Warriors movie for years and years. When I finally saw it, it was the biggest disappointment ever. That bit,
you need to have seen it in the early 80s or late 70s.
That scene stuck with me, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But every time I do the recycling and I've got bottles, I go to the kids. Warriors. It's the best bit of it.
Did you ever hear the story behind that? I remember reading something. Did he tell you the story, or did you ask him T about the story, how he done the bottles? And
that
it was all sort of last minute.
It was last
in, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was last minute. I think I asked him, they were literally ad-libbing because he wanted to do something with a couple of dead pigeons that he'd found. And the director was like, that's just too weird.
Yeah. I'd love to see him do that with dead pigeons. That'd have been weird.
The great thing about David Patrick Kelly is he disappears into all his roles. So he's like Luther in The Warriors. He's like Sully in Commando. He's T-Bird in The Crow. Yeah, Luther in 48 Hours. He's in Dreamscape. And I think it was literally the first time I discovered IMDb when I was like, oh my God, he's the same guy in The Crow as, the guy in Commando. And I was like, well, I've got to interview him. And he is the nicest man. Nicest man. We literally spoke for 2 hours, and he wanted to he was asking more questions about me, and I had to steer him around and get him back on track.
He's got
absolutely
a
lovely
degree in fine art. doesn't he? He's a Bachelor of Fine Arts.
Yeah, we were talking about his love of J.R.R. Tolkien and stuff
I
he's
heard
done on
he
stage.
also schooled under Marcel Marceau, to my mind, as well.
Yeah, he's very big into kind of performance art. I think he
He's an
plays
all-rounder, isn't he? He's a
folk
proper
music.
all-rounder.
He's a big musician. He's a fascinating guy, and he was just really friendly with his stories. He kind of talked about what it was like working on The Crow when Brandon Lee was killed, and he was very kind of open about all of that. You know, working with Arnie on Commando, and kind of, I think when I interviewed him, it was just before the Twin Peaks revival was coming out. We talked about how he ended up just in John Wick as Charlie, the guy who just picks up bodies. Man, we had a lot to talk about.
I like that character. He's popped up in some really good films.
He's popped a lot of films. So, ladies and gentlemen, old schoolers, that's the guy that, you know, if you don't know who we're talking about, he was the little guy in Commando who Arnold Schwarzenegger picked up the phone box and threw around, and then said he lied.
Remember I said I killed you last?
Yeah, you did. I lied. What happened to him? I had to let him go. But you notice in that scene, the Porsche, the yellow Porsche, is like fucked. It's side of it is straight.
In the next shot,
when they drive
fine.
off, it's nice and shiny. I always
It's nice
spot
and
that
shiny,
bit out in that movie.
There's some continuity errors in Commando. You can see the cable hanging to Sully's foot as well.
Yes,
something.
we talked about that.
Did you talk
about how
about
it's
that?
cable.
That's
Yeah,
cool.
Yes.
yeah. Mark Lester, the director, went to Arnie. He was like, "Okay, pick him up and let's hang him over the cliff." And Arnie was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Well, you're like one of the strongest guys in the world. Pick him up by his leg, hang him over the cliff." He's like, "I'm not gonna do that. What are you talking about? That's dangerous. And I can't just pick a guy up by his leg." And Mark was like, "What are you talking about? I've seen you like bench press weights that are twice as heavy as David. You can lift them up." He's like, "Those are weights. Those are balanced. I'm like on my back. You just asked me to like hold a guy with one hand and he's like squirming." It's like, no, I will drop him and he will die. So that's why he's got a cable, and David's wearing like a harness that Western actors would kind of wear for stunts, where they would be like yanked off a horse when they're pretending to be shot, to kind of give that whip crack effect. So that's the thing. Arnie could not lift David Patrick Kelly up alone, simply because, you know, of the balance. And it was the same with like the phone booth. They had to kind of not give him an actual phone booth, but it was made of like plywood, because he was like, again,
I can't.
It's not balanced. I'm not just lifting up a phone booth. That's not how weightlifting works. I just can't lift something that's, you know, lopsided and I'll go all over the place.
I bet they were terribly disappointed. They were like, "We got this strong guy and he's telling us he can't lift nothing."
He's not even doing anything.
Come on, carrying this tree, feed this deer, lift up a phone booth. It's like,
That argument was taking so long, the crew was like, "We might as well fix up that Porsche."
Exactly. Buff out those dents.
But the thing is, in this whole conversation you just said, David Patrick Kelly seemed like he was up for doing it.
He threw, from what he said, he kind of threw himself into it. He was kind of like, I'm up for anything. But I was like, so did Arnie just pick you up? He's like, no, there were cables. Don't worry about it.
We've seen them. We know. We've seen them.
Yeah.
So the first time I probably saw him was 48 hours.
48 hours for me as well.
First time I saw him, and then it was Warriors, then Commando. But I just realised something. I think David Patrick Kelly walks around with a Walkman with a Steel Pan song in his pocket, because in 48 hours, Mondo, how about the same tune?
He's got that same Steel
Did he have it in his pocket and he just picked up in sound of it? Oh fuck it, we'll just use it in both films. Because
I think that's James Horner. I think James Horner likes to plagiarize himself from film to film. I mean,
so you use the same song in two different films?
Hey, I mean, if you listen to like the Alien soundtrack and the Star Trek II Wrath of Khan soundtrack back to back, there are pieces of music where you're like, come on, James, come on, I'm onto you.
That's his style then.
Same with like Braveheart and Titanic. There are certain cues where he's like, I'm just going to put this thing from Braveheart to Titanic, No one's going to notice. Smooth it over. Get another Oscar.
But that's still a bad one. That was a blatant, like, I can't think of anything. Look, he's in it. I'm just going to throw that in as well.
It worked in 48 hours.
Yeah, it did. So, yeah, David Patrick Kelly, great. So the next person we're going to go on, Timon, is British actor, darling of the theatre, Stephen Bierkoff.
Oh, Steve Burkoff, man. He
Bierkoff,
was the one I was most terrified to interview.
I can't imagine,
because
he's got that
aura of him. That aura. There are stories about him just being, left of center. He's really intense. He's intense in films. And it took me ages to kind of get an interview. Like, his people saying, no, he's too busy, blah, blah, blah. And in interviews that I'd read, it seemed like he kind of has a certain disdain for the bigger films that he's done. Your Rambos, your Beverly Hills Cops, your James Bond films. So I was kind of like, he won't want to talk to me about this. And when I finally got an interview, I was just kind of, and I think this comes over in the interview, I'm kind of like trying to get him to talk about those films without directly asking about it. Like, kind of going, I read that, you financed a certain play that you wrote by doing Beverly Hills Cop. Or I heard that you wrote this play while on the set of Rambo 2 because it was so testosterone, and you kind of
testosterone think how you were going to get these questions across to it.
Wow.
And I heard in an interview that he does regard all them Hollywood films that he done them to subsidise the all his theatre work.
That's true, but every now and then he would just kind of go, he would talk about it, like, doing Beverly Hills Cop, and he seems to have like a high regard for Stallone. He was like, I don't think he had the best time making that film, but he was like, I would really like to see Stallone play Coriolanus on the stage. They really think he has it in him. I'm like, well, that's never going to happen. But what was interesting about Burkoff was I had him for half an hour, and I think when half an hour was up, he was like, so do you have everything you need? And I was like, I think so. He's like, good, I've got other things to do now, bye. And hung up on me. And I was like, that is classic Burkoff.
That's Burkoff.
Yeah,
that's
if
Burkoff.
that hadn't have happened, I would have been disappointed.
It would have been more classic if we said, so why don't you crawl back under that little stone in Bristol and put down the phone?
But what's amazing is I recently saw he's now on Cameo, so he's doing those things where you can pay like actors or celebrities like 50 quid
lines.
to record a personalized message. And I'm like, mate, if Stephen Burkoff is on Cameo, he's fallen on hard times, or he's really trying to finance like a project. But he was the one I was most nervous about.
So what's your favorite performance from him? What film?
I think it has to be Beverly Hills Cop, because he just appears to be in a completely different film from everyone else. He was playing it like he still thinks Stallone has been cast as like Axel Foley, which was and then they've got Eddie Murphy. They've completely rewritten it as like an action comedy, but they haven't told Stephen Burke. So he's still playing it as like the lethal drug dealing art gallery owner, no kind of twinkle in his eye, just and he's great. He's terrifying, and I think he's brilliant in it. But that scene where Eddie Murphy walks into his office and he like pretends he doesn't know anything about his dead friend, and he goes, but of course Detroit is a very dangerous city, isn't it, Detective Foley? And he's just so sinister.
He is,
and
definitely.
So he's great. He was great.
I
was really glad I got him.
I liked him in Octopussy as well, as General Orlov.
General Orlov, he's great in that. That again, that is a film where Roger Moore's doing one thing and Burkoff's just doing something completely different.
His own thing.
Apparently, I heard that the house in Beverly Hills Cop and the house in Commando, the mansion,
same thing,
same mansion,
and V as well. They used it in V, the TV series as well.
And V,
it's the was it Harold Lloyd? Is it Harold Lloyd? Henry Lloyd? Harold Lloyd.
What, the
Might
guy
have been
who hangs
Harold
up
Lloyd.
clocks?
Yeah, the Silent Star.
Yeah,
Might have been
yeah,
him,
yeah.
yeah.
It's his old place, and it's now it's on Airbnb. You can get a room there if you want.
Yeah.
That's
Anyone who
awesome.
wants to stay there, check out Airbnb, get a room there.
What do you mean? We should stay there. We should all go there.
We should all go there. Yeah, we should all go there.
Have a big mansion 80s action party. Yeah. No, I agree with you, Timon. Beverly Hills Cop. I did like him in Beverly Hills Cop. He was also good in The Craze, the Craze film.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Craze, yeah. He's done so much, but the hard thing is when you're interviewing these actors that have such like a diverse filmography is you know that you've got to hit certain things and you know you've got them for a certain amount of time. So you're like...
You've got to get to the point, don't you?
Yeah, you've got to try and get stories out of them while trying to hit certain points. And you're like, otherwise you're like, I mean, tell me about this like tiny thing that you did in... Remember that time you were in Star Trek Deep Space Nine as a terrorist? Tell me about that. And it's like, why are you
I heard he was
remotely...
approached to play Dick Jones in Robocop as well. Originally, that was who they wanted to play Dick Jones.
You could see that.
I think I might have asked him that actually. Hang on, I've got my copy here.
Free plug,
I think that there was like a thing where I was like, "Is it true that you're approached to do this?" And he was like, "I have no memory of that ever coming my way." So that I think it might have been Robocop. Yeah, it's like
film?
no.
Robo what?
Yeah.
I might have, and I thought no.
Yeah.
It is below me.
And it robotic cops. How dare they? I dealt with Beverly Hills one, and that's it. All right. So our third villain from your book, I believe it's his birthday today. Started as a good guy. First saw him as a good guy in Beverly Hills Cop, and then he turned nasty in Robocop and Total Recall. And that's Ronnie Cox.
Ronnie Cox, yes, his birthday today. So I've been to his house in LA. He's a lovely guy. He's kind of stepped away from acting these days. He's a folk musician and he kind of tours. Great thing about Ronnie Cox is, man, he does not shy away from his political feelings. So I kind of got into his house. We got talking and we were talking about deliverance. And he was like, "Can you fucking believe what my old friend John Voight is saying about Trump? What? I don't know what's happened to him. I don't know what he's been drinking. I don't know how anyone can like that man." And then he just started launching into like this big anti-Trump rant for 10 minutes. And I was just like, this is glorious. Don't fuck with Dick Jones, man.
The old OCP owns the cops.
It's just like he hates Trump. If you follow him on Facebook, it's just like, let me tell you what a bitch that man is today. It's like, So, but yeah, he was talking about Deliverance, and the interesting thing is after Deliverance, apparently Hollywood casting agents saw him as too sensitive, which he said was kind of code for, too effeminate, because his character in Deliverance, plays a guitar, and they didn't see him as like a serious actor. And then he went through that phase where he got cast as like military officers and taps, or kind of police officers in Beverly Hills Cops. And he said it was really Paul Verhoeven that changed his career by taking the chance and kind of casting him as Dick Jones in Robocop, because he has that all-American look. I think he even says it's like, people say I'm like an Apollo astronaut who's gone rogue or gone bad. It's like he's got this all-American look, and just plays these, top 1% corporate assholes, both in Total Recall and Robocop. And he is lovely. He is lovely. When I interviewed him, we talked about everything. I'm a big Star Trek fan, so I was like, while I've got you here, you remember when you were in Star Trek: The Next Generation? You took over the Enterprise from Picard. He was like, let me tell you about what fun it was working on Star Trek. And I was like, wow, if you're talking about that, do you remember why you were in Deep Blue Sea? And there's just that one scene where Samuel L. Jackson stood next to you and you say nothing the entire scene. You have no lines in Deep Blue Sea. He was like, yeah, let me tell you about that. And so he told me the story about that. All your listeners are just going to have to buy the book. But I was like, I love this. He'll just answer anything. So, I have nothing but great things to say about Ronnie Cox. The man was a delight.
So what did you prefer him in as a bad guy? Total Recall or Robocop?
I mean, Dick Jones and Cohagen, I think, are very similar characters to an extent. Yeah. One just has swept back hair.
Yeah.
And
one looked at his camera and went like that. You remember that movie done on the TV?
But I think it's kind of like that Jeff Bezos gone mad, that whole Lex Luthor corporate, I can do anything I want, I can control the air. It's like
I can kill goldfish and shit.
I can kill goldfish. I think Paul Verhoeven was ahead of the time, and
he was.
The main people who we need to be worried about, the fucking head of the corporations, your Mark Zuckerberg,
exactly.
Your Bill Gateses, and people will hold all the power and be able to literally control the air that we breathe.
That's right, because apparently Paul Verhoeven he wasn't going to take RoboCop at first. It was given to lots of directors, and no one was really interested. And it wasn't until his wife read through it. Apparently, he said, "All right, we make this into a gory RoboFest."
And that was another thing Ronnie Cox really picked up on, because Paul Verhoeven was Dutch and kind of lived through the Nazi occupation of the Netherlands. He's that man has seen real violence and real cruelty. So when he's doing films like Starship Troopers and he's putting it through that satirical lens of, you think you know what fascism is? I've lived through fascism.
Yeah.
So he's kind of Ronnie Cox really rallied against kind of the censors who made cuts to the violence on RoboCop, because when Paul Verhoeven delivered the cut, it was so overblown and so over the top that it was clearly satirical. But when the censors went in and kind of cut it back, by cutting it back and making it less over the top, it made it look harsher than it actually was. So he's you're making it worse by not making it as comical. You need to have that kind of man blown away by the Ed 209 for 20 seconds, and then someone going, call a medic. It's that's funny, because there's nothing left of that guy. If you only do it for 5 seconds and there's not that much blood splatter, it's just more brutal.
It's true.
Yeah.
But there's so many scenes in that film that people can choose from, like the guy melting and getting run over.
One of my best scenes.
The whole cocaine scene where he shoots up in the warehouse. There's so many great scenes in that film. But whenever it gets to the Dick Jones bit, you just that character, even in the bathroom scene, when he's in the bathroom and he comes out and has the chat. That scene was so I felt like I was in the bathroom too, listening, going, "Oh shit, what's going to happen?" Do you know what I mean? Because his character was so intense.
Apparently really grabbed hold of Miguel Ferrera's
you could see it.
Hair.
You could see it. You could see that he actually pulls his hair, and that scene was really good. And then when you see him back in Beverly Hills Cop, Beverly Hills Cop 2, you're like, "Oh, come on, man! I want to see that bad guy again. This good guy."
He was like Beverly Hills Cop 2, man. It's I don't think they knew what to do with me.
They didn't.
And he's very kind of dismissive, and quite rightly so. Of the remake of Total Recall and the remake of Robocop. He's
100%.
And apparently he was they invited me back to appear in Robocop 2, and I was like, did you not see the ending of the first Why do you want me? I fell out of a window. It's I'm dead, and they're we'll work around it, and he's nah, I'm out.
Serious? They wanted to bring him back. He got shot.
They wanted to bring him back
out of a window, out of a building, and okay.
Yeah.
Did he talk to you about? Did you ever ask him about the time he did play the president of the USA?
Oh, in Captain America.
One of Darren's favourite films with
we talked about that. We talked about the number of times he's actually played the president. I think he's played it 4 or 5 times. I think there's a murder at 1600 feet. He's been the president on, I think, the Stargate TV series, and also the canon Captain America film.
Ronnie Cox, we salute you.
It's made you said earlier, you're a bit of a Star Trek fan. I wasn't massively into Star Trek, but out of RoboCop, there's 4 of the actors have gone on to go into
everyone kind of crops up. Ray Wise has done it.
They all seem to just cross over into Star Trek.
And 24 as well. A lot of the guys from Robocop have ended up in 24, like Ray Wise, Paul McCrane, I think it was Jack Bauer's brother. Sure, Kurtwood Smith's been in it, but there's a lot of crossover. But I think this is just being a genre actor. If you kind of are in that sci-fi realm, whether it's like Robocop or Captain America or Star Trek, because people are fans of that, you will tend to move around.
Oh because Peter Weller was in Star Trek, wasn't he? So
Yeah.
There's a war coming. It says something like that. That voice. He also voiced one of the Batman cartoons. I can't remember which one, but every time I watch
think he's
Batman
Doomsday, David Warner. Yeah.
I just think you just hear Robocop, Batman as Robocop. It's a weird. His voice is so distinctive.
David Warner, I think, has played 3 different roles in Star Trek alone. That man, they like him in that.
I like it. All right. So our fourth villain from your book is this guy as well. He was in Commando. 41st saw him in Commando, and he's a Green Beret. But Arnie eats them for breakfast, so he was done in that. And then the first time you saw him, Timo, he got his head blown off.
Yeah.
Over here.
Do you know that?
Anytime.
Get out the room. Did you know the Predator's voiced by Peter Cullen, Optimus Prime?
Yeah, he is, isn't he? Yeah.
Really?
He's Optimus Prime. Yeah, Peter Cullen voiced him.
I did try and interview Peter Cullen for the second book. Couldn't get him. Again, that's a man who's always working.
To have on a podcast.
Peter,
that'd be a wicked one.
He would. Yeah.
No, sorry, it was Frank Welker I was trying to get. Peter Cullen's Optimus Prime. I was trying to get Megatron.
Obviously,
Obviously, yeah.
But Peter Cullen was also Venger in Dungeons and Dragons. So
really, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So no, where are we going?
Go back to Bill.
Bill Duke.
Bill Duke.
So again, I got to meet Bill Duke when I went to LA to do the interviews for In Search of the Last Action Hero. So I got to hang out with him for a bit, and that man is massive. It's like he's 6'4", his hands
6.5 foot,
just giant hands, man.
Yeah.
But
I've never seen him with hair. I just know it. You know him for that tall stature, the bald head.
But he was really interesting to talk to because he is a man that
he does a lot, it seems.
Yeah, he's very aware of kind of like the impact of film. So we were talking about henchman roles that he's played in kind of films like Commando or Bird on a Wire, where he's like
he was
an evil henchman.
He was definitely typecast when he in the 80s anyway. Even
though there are like films early on in his career where he's playing like a gay pimp or something. There was a time in the 80s where it's like Bill Duke's a 6'4" black man. We're going to cast him as a bad guy, and he was like, I was very conscious in my career that I was going to get typecast as someone who's just a big terrifying black man. And he was like, I wanted to do something where I wanted to be seen as more of a positive role model to kind of young black actors and young black men. So that's where I made like a shift, and I'm playing, police officers. So he's like the police captain in Action Jackson, and stuff like I think Men's Society.
Fucked up.
Things like that.
I love that.
You got fucked up.
Everyone must say that to him now, man. Wherever
he says
he must get that.
He says he gets that every day. It's like, he said, so he and now he's got the Bill Duke Foundation, which is specifically designed to like give a foot up to like young up and coming actors, and he does a lot of good work. And so that was really interesting talking to him, because he was like, I set out doing one thing, and people remember me from like Commando and Predator and everything. But just along the line, it's like I don't want to be seen as like a terrifying black man. And made a conscious effort to play different roles. And every now and then he'll play like a bad guy in something like X-Men: The Last Stand or Sharp and Battlestar Galactica or something like that. But
he needs to keep it in there somewhere.
He needs to keep it in. But again, genre, it's like people want Bill Duke.
Yeah, if it's a
there are
sci-fi
people
role,
like,
you
I'm going to get Bill Duke in my thing, and I'll get him in. But he's someone who's kind of very conscious that constantly playing bad guys could have a larger cultural and societal impact. And he wanted to change that. And it was fascinating to talk to. But he had some great stories about making stuff with, like, you know, Predator, being on set with Arnie, you know, that kind of testosterone.
Did he actually cut himself with a razor blade?
No. Okay. Yeah, blood in the handle, and he squeezes it out.
But that's the thing. In Predator, he wasn't a scary, terrifying black man. He was a terrified black man. He knew there was something out there, and his best friend just got his stomach
He didn't like
out.
Dylan.
Yeah, but
he scared him.
Yeah, he did. He scared Dylan. Yeah, Dylan was scared of everyone. Fucking.
Well, I think even if I'm talking to the actors about playing villain roles, you can't get Bill Duke and then not ask a couple of Predator questions. It's just rude.
Yeah, exactly. So he's worked with Schwarzenegger twice. It's just those two films, wasn't it? Commando and Predator.
Commando and Predator. I think it's just two. Yeah.
Cook and Mac.
Yeah.
But I think they see each other every now and then, because I think a couple of years ago they did a big anniversary Predator event, and I think they hung out then. So as far as I know, they still hang out every now and then.
Cool.
He must have been directing back when he was, you know, in the 80s, when we know him for all these films. He must have been directing then, because he
directed Sister Act 2, didn't he?
Sister Act 2, Back in the Habit. Yeah.
Before that, you know, he's down for Cagney and Lacey, Dallas, Hill Street Blues, some Miami Vice, Twilight Zone. His list of work he's done.
I
think this was him being canny. He's like, I can't just rely on being 6'4" and massive. Yeah, it's like you've got to diversify. And he's a writer, director, producer, and that's what the Bill Duke Foundation does these days. So does everything from, like you said, episodes of Cagney and Lacey to Sister Act 2, Back in the Habit. So
exactly, that's a wide.
Don't try and put Bill Duke in a corner.
Exactly. I also liked him in Payback with Mel Gibson. That was a nice little part as well.
That was the first 18 certificate film I saw in the cinema. Payback.
Serious?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, man.
Everything else was on pirate, wasn't it?
That was the first one I remember seeing in the cinema, I think. Yeah. Was that 1998? It came out around then.
I don't remember. I don't remember the 90s, man.
That was raving days.
It's like how people talk about the 60s. I just can't remember it.
I don't have much recall of the 90s.
I saw the back end of it movie-wise. Phantom Menace and Matrix. That's all I remember.
he's been popping up recently though in Black Lightning. I remember like watching that.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's good to see him in that.
I heard he was in that. I haven't seen any of it, but I heard he's good. Yeah.
So it's definitely aged quite a bit, which is, you know, all these guys we've spoken about now, in my head, they still look like how we imagine them on screen, but these guys are in their 70s and 80s now, aren't they, most of them?
Yeah, well, I think that was kind of the other thing that I wanted to kind of talk to them, you know, why you get the opportunity, because there were a few that, you know, tragically died while I was writing the book. Powers Booth, you know, from Sudden Death and Tombstone and everything. I reached out to his team and they were like, oh yeah, he'd be absolutely up for it. You know, reach out, get back to us in a month. And a couple of weeks later, he died. And I was like,
oh, wow.
Yeah, but it was kind of like,
because you got to remember they were old villains in the 80s.
Yeah, exactly.
So they are old.
Ronnie Cox, I think, is in his 80s now, and
that's right. Yeah. Okay, so our fifth villain that we remember, and it's in your book, is Final One. This guy, he was in Cagney and Lacey.
He was like the face of the 80s, this guy.
Yeah,
he was on
everything. He was in Rambo 2, but people more remember him for having his own dojo.
Yes, Sensei.
Yeah. And, you know, if you want to win, you got to sweep the leg.
Yeah.
And,
No mercy.
No mercy. And that's Mr. Martin Cove.
Martin Cove,
who was the last interview for the first book. He had said yes, and then it was like 8 months of kind of like trying to get the interview. Like, I think his son had a granddaughter, and I think stuff was revving up for the first season of Cobra Kai. Because when I interviewed him, I was like, so Cobra Kai's happening, are you in it? And he was like, I can't really talk about that. I was like, but you're in it. It's like, well, I was like, so hypothetically, if you were to like explain why, Kreese is the way that he is, why do you think that is? And so he went into that, a man who kind of came back from Vietnam, and he, in his mind, he was told he wasn't allowed to win, and so now he's back in the real world. He's never going to lose, whatever the cost.
He's the best around.
Yeah, he was lovely, man. And I've been watching Cobra Kai when it came out. Cobra Kai, when that came out, I was like, I'm sure this will be fun. It'll be a little bit cheesy. It had no right being as good as it was.
So yes. So what was Martin like then? What was he like? Was he
He was very generous. From what I remember, I interviewed him just after Christmas because I was around at my parents' house, and I had to do the interview upstairs. And he was really generous with his time. Talked about, I think him and Stallone have like quite a long friendship. I think he talked about loads of stuff. I think the main thing that sticks out is, at the beginning of Karate Kid 2, when he confronts Mr. Miyagi and Daniel in the car park, and he smashes the windows of the car. He told me that there were windows that were real and windows that had like sugar glass, and he punched the wrong windows.
He fucked up his hands, didn't he?
Yeah, he fucked up his hands, and it was just like, dude,
no mercy.
But I think it's been amazing since I've interviewed him. With Cobra Kai, and he had a bit of a tiny role in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think he's having a little bit of a career renaissance, and I can be happier for him. Yeah.
So his role in Karate Kid is your favorite performance from him, is it?
I think it's so iconic because Karate Kid, when it's the teenage Rocky. It's kind of it's the same director. It's like, but with martial arts and Eastern mysticism, and you go through that phase where you're like, I'm gonna try martial arts out for a bit, and I think it's like,
I can do
for many kids, it's like an entry level martial arts film, and then you get some uncle going. If you like the Karate Kid, I've got this film here called Enter the Dragon. You'll love it.
Yeah.
Oh, you like that? Here's Police Story. And Project A and Drunken Master, and here's Fist of Legend with Jet Li, and then before you know it, going down the rabbit hole. But I think simply because of the Karate Kid's cultural standing, I think that's the one everyone remembers him for. And he's great in Rambo too, but
I think I remember him and most like him from Cagney and Lacey. It was one of them things that I had a little black and white telly. Used to fall asleep watching Cagney and Lacey at like 11:30 at night or whatever time.
I love Cagney and Lacey.
I used to like an episode where was he Sergeant Isbecki? I think Victor Isbecki or something his name was. An episode that he was in it. I thought, it's going to be action. There's going to be some shootouts in this one. I like his character from Cagney and Lacey.
In the new book, there are actors that I kind of interviewed that I couldn't get the first time, and one of them is Robert Patrick, so the T-1000. And he started out doing like Roger Corman action films in Indonesia. And, then he got, a role in Die Hard 2, and that led to the T-1000. And then after that, there was just a fallow period where he was making absolute schlock. And I was like, we've got to talk about this. And he was like, mate, I got to work. I had to work.
Yeah. And he was like...
Because there was that period... the clock's ticking, where I was like, you played the T-1000 in like Wayne's World 2 and Last Action Hero. I was like, did you just think you'd be a parody of yourself? And he was like, man, that's a very real fucking possibility. So I was just starring in starring in all these straight-to-video thrillers.
Those are our 5. So we didn't mention everybody in your book, but you've got over 10 villains.
Well over 10.
In the first book about 30.
Oh, there you go.
So you got whack in there.
We haven't even touched on what's in his book. If you want to know more of them stories that you've just heard, make sure you get the book, because there's some good bits in there. It's really
many
good.
more, and there's sections like the henchmen and the this and the that, and so there's all the 80s villainous favourites, all the films you love. So check out the book. So you've got the first book, the second book. How many villains are in your second book then?
So I got 20. I did a good round number for 20 interviews for the second book. So we've got people like Robert Patrick, the T-1000, Stephen Lang from Avatar and Don't Breathe, and Tombstone. He also originated the role of Colonel Nathan Jessup from A Few Good Men, but on stage. So while people remember Jack Nicholson playing him, he kind of originated the role. Scott Adkins, martial arts star Scott Adkins. Sala Baker, who's a big Samoan actor who's best known for kind of playing Sauron in the Lord of the Rings films. Michelle Kesey, who's Tong Po and kickboxer. Tony Todd. So I've actually got the Candyman in terms of horror things, but we talk about like all his other roles that he's played, you know, like in The Rock and stuff.
Coming back as another episode of Candyman.
Yeah, which looks amazing. People like Xander Berkeley from Air Force One and The Walking Dead, William Fichtner from Heat and
another good lineup.
Dark Knight, Kim Coates from like Waterworld and The Last Boy Scout. That's
enough. So who's your ultimate villain of all time? You choose one. Just
action villain of all time. Who do I think of? I mean, weirdly, and it's because he did so much throughout his career. It's probably someone like Sir Christopher Lee, because you know he was Dracula. You know, he was Scaramanga, and you know he was a Sith Lord. He was in Lord of the Rings, and in his actual career, like he fought in World War II in the OSS, and he killed Nazis. There's like this great story about when he was making. He was just in the desert, just killing Nazis. But there's this story about when he was making Return of the King, and when his character Saruman the White is killed by Grima Wormtongue, he's like stabbed in the back, with a knife. And Peter Jackson, the director, went, "So Christopher, when you're stabbed, I want you to kind of make this noise where you go," Brah. And Christopher Lee goes, "Look, Peter, I know what it sounds like when a man is stabbed in the back." Thank you very much. And Peter Jackson was like, "Okay, I will leave it to you."
I'll just put this vest on and I'll just get back behind the camera.
I think Christopher Lee, like Scaramanga and the Man with the Golden Gun, you know, where he's just there calmly, just having dinner with Roger Moore, and it's just like oozing, like simultaneously both menace and just sophistication. It's kind of like it's like why everyone loves Alan Rickman. It's that same blend of just like effortless charm, sophistication, and also menace. And that's the thing. That's why a lot of like European and especially British actors were cast as villains in the 70s and 80s. Because, you know, because they're tone. And the 90s, it's like, you know, Jeremy Irons and
that's right.
Die Hard with a Vengeance. It's like, we need a German actor. Let's just get that British guy.
Exactly. But
he was Scar in The Lion King. Get him in.
There you go. But for me, in more recent times, again, I like that calm villain. Like, for instance, the character that Christoph Waltz plays in Inglourious Bastards.
I love that character.
Hans Lander.
Amazing character. But in recent times, in action and explosion and in fantasy, whatever, the guy's CGI, but Thanos is just like, he's like 8 foot something, muscle bound, but so
very calm. Very calm. It's like, it's got purpose. He knows
the guy does his own washing. The guy picks his own fruits and chills. Like, what's he doing? A top villain.
I think that's what makes a good villain like scary. It's like complete and utter belief in what you're doing.
Effortlessness.
It's very easy to like dismiss someone who's like ranting and raving. It's like, oh, they're mad, whatever. But it's when they're calm
and calculated.
And just like, and not just that, but they sound completely reasonable. It's like, look, all I want to do is kill 50% of the universe, save it. What is wrong with that?
What's
and you're
wrong
like,
with that?
You didn't sound like a genocidal maniac. I'd be on board.
One more thing. We got a list. If you've done a TV villains, right? Check this out. What do you think of TV villains, right? So we got here Diana from V.
Right, yeah.
We got Car from Knight Rider.
Yeah,
we got Dirty Den from EastEnders.
Yeah.
We got Nasty Nick from EastEnders.
Not EastEnders in here.
And we got Grot Bags.
Right.
What do you think?
I mean,
that's a book
not
right
so
there.
much an EastEnders fan, so I'm thinking like more of like you know, the great TV villains. So I'm thinking like your Stringer Bells, your Heisenbergs, and you know, most recently in Breaking Bad, like basically all the characters in that.
What was the guy, the chicken guy? What was his name again? Gus.
Gus Fring. Gus Fring.
He's gonna. Why don't you get hold of him? Because he's turned out to be a real bad man with Mandalorian, Breaking Bad.
Yeah. Well, Giancarlo Esposito, it's like I kind of grew up and he was always in like Spike Lee films.
Yeah,
like he's just always there.
Yeah. So guys, check out Ty's books. There's 2 of them now to check out. A vast array of villains. Not even if you like villains, just like 80s movies. There's so many great stories in there, and even pictures.
Lots of pictures.
Lots of pictures. So guys, check out all good bookstores online. If you like the 80s, check it out. Timon, thank you. Been a great guest. Been part of our 80s action heroes and villains series that we've been doing. And
we'll be back for another villains episode when the book's out.
Yeah, of course.
Awesome,
of course. We'll be back. Thank you.
All right, cheers guys. Have a good one.
Nice one.
Peace.
Bye.
Oh, that was a big interview, man.
That was great having Ty. That was wicked.
Yeah. But it's so. But as we were saying, we only mentioned 5 really. But
I want to see what's like coming in his other books. There's more in it. There's more.
There's more. It's like 30 in that book, 20 in this new one.
We'll definitely go back to it and have a look.
Definitely.
More villains.
Definitely. So guys, please check out the book. Born to be Bad.
Available on Amazon. Have a look. We'll try and get some links up on our socials. You can check it out, read what it's all about, and look back at them old villains from the 80s.
That's it. So guys, thanks for listening again. Hope you enjoyed the show. Peace.
Peace.
Those were the days I remember.